Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio, brought to you by IDS, an award-winning digital marketing agency that delivers integrated marketing solutions for franchisors, franchisees, and franchise development teams. Learn why over 75 brands depend on IDS's team of dedicated marketers and client service professionals to deliver a strong ROI on their marketing investment. Go to idsfranchisemarketing.com for a complimentary digital audit and consultation.
Excellent. It's great to be back for another episode of Franchise Marketing Radio, the show where we dive into captivating conversations with industry leaders and experts in the world of franchising. I'm your host, Rob Ganley, and today we have a fantastic guest who is making waves in the restaurant franchise landscape. Joining us on the show is Scott Moffitt. He is the CEO of Sunny Street Cafe, a rising star in the breakfast and lunch segment. In a time where traditional corporate breakfast chains are facing shifts in popularity, Sunny Street Cafe is stepping into the spotlight, offering a fresh and promising approach. We'll be delving into why the Ohio-based restaurant franchise is poised to become the next big player in the industry, from simplified operations to comprehensive support and an appealing lifestyle benefit for entrepreneurs. Sunny Street Cafe is certainly capturing attention. Today, we'll explore how Sunny Street Cafe has mastered the breakfast and lunch business model, adapted to changing times, and positioned itself for even greater success. So without further ado, let's welcome Scott to the show. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, and thanks for having me, Rob. Really looking forward to visiting with you today.
You got it. It's great to be here. So tell me a little bit about how things came to be. Tell us about the breakfast and lunch segment and how it's evolving and how you got involved with Sunny Street Cafe. I know you have a long history in franchising. Sure.
I've pretty much been involved in food and franchising food opportunities since I got involved in the business. And it's getting to seem like a long time ago. Let's just say it's been a couple of decades. So I enjoy it. The industry, the restaurant and food service industry is dynamic. It's changing. It's evolved. I've been involved with it long enough to have a little bit of perspective to see how it's changed and grown over the years. And franchising is clearly one of the most rewarding aspects of the food service industry because it's given so many people so many opportunities over the years to get involved in business ownership and entrepreneurship and really kind of capture that American dream that we've all talked about. So that's exciting. That's sort of what gets me excited about coming to work every day, to have this as an opportunity to offer to folks that will allow them to achieve their personal and their business goals. That we talk a lot in our concept about a work-life balance, which we think is super important. And because of our concept, the breakfast and lunch concept, we're 6:30 to 2:30. And there's a lot of advantages to that, both economically as well as personally. But for many of our franchise owners that have come to us from other industries, that's been kind of what they've been looking for. They wanted an opportunity to be involved in a business, for themselves, but not by themselves, right? So that's sort of the tenet of the franchise model. And they wanted to have an opportunity to create wealth for them and their families. And they wanted to have an opportunity to enjoy their families and have the lifestyle benefits of, for us on a bad day, if things haven't gone particularly well, you're out of the restaurant at 3:30 in the afternoon, which means that you're still picking the kids up from school. You're still having a family meal. You're still able to be involved in your community and other activities that complement the business, but not replace it necessarily. So, yeah.
I mean, lifestyle benefits and a simplified business model is enticing for people, right? It's what they kind of are looking for. And if I kind of was listening carefully, what you're saying is, in some cases, this can be a business where you can have that as well, right? You can put the team in place, put the business in place, and it operates like a good business would, profitably, right? Helping people. So, but yeah, tell me a little bit more about what makes you guys unique in that regard, though. What are some of the innovations or ideas that you had to kind of deal with over the years to make that make what I just described, something where people can come in and maybe go from semi-passive to passive, or have multiple locations, or have a strategy where they they're more ambitious, let's say.
Sure. Yeah. Our founding stakeholder is a Columbus businessman by the name of Mike Stasko. Mike and I have known each other and have worked together for going on 40 years. And he was responsible for bringing this concept from Northern Florida to Columbus. And he did that specifically because he wanted to create a business where he and his family can be involved. He was a very successful business person. Previous to this, he'd been or is in the restaurant equipment and supply business, but wanted to create an opportunity for his kids. So, that was the driving incentive for him bringing the concept to Columbus. And that tenet, or that underwriting current of family, remains very important to us, and is a hallmark really of our concept. We're 22 restaurants strong right now. We have several that are in development. So it's relatively small, but we've gotten the opportunity to work and interface with our franchisees on a daily basis. And we see them not only as business partners, but also as strong, have a strong family orientation, being involved in their communities, having ties that go beyond just the offering of a breakfast and lunch cafe. So it's a bit nuanced. This is truly a family opportunity and a family operation. So, that I think has an appeal to folks that want to feel, be part of this, and to have their business opportunity reflect their family values.
Well, tell me a little bit about, that there's a lot to be said there. A lot of people are getting into business more than just to make money. Obviously, you want to make good investments and to do well financially. It enables you to be a better business and to provide better services. So the goal is always to make profits, but you want to do it for reasons other than that. You want to do it for community ties and to make a
Correct.
difference in the world you're living in, right? Tell me a little bit, though, obviously you probably get these questions, maybe not as much anymore, but still think it's a great question because I love the franchise industry and what it did during the pandemic. Obviously, it was an unprecedented situation. No one really had a playbook for it. And now we kind of, if it ever were to happen again, I think we have maybe a better playbook. But we weren't ready, right? But I always said when we were interviewing folks back then in 2020 that it was such a great example of franchising at work, because it was the idea that everybody as a team, as a group, as a network would pull together and work together to work through a complex problem. You couldn't create a case study that would have been harder to solve. It sounds like a good, master's program to solve, right? A problem. Like, if this were to happen, what would you do? Tell me a little bit about how the brand dealt with that. Obviously, in the restaurant industry, it was something that was hit pretty hard by something like that. Tell me, though, what positive came out of it, because that's what I saw a lot of. Yeah. It's just a lot of cool things, innovations that may have come from that, learnings. Tell me a little bit about how you guys know.
It's so interesting to sit here from the perspective today and look back on those times and say, we really did benefit from some of those opportunities as they were presented to us. Because obviously at the time, it was terrifying. You're right. There was no playbook. Nobody had the guidelines to navigate us through that. We went from a thriving business to closed dark dining rooms, and we didn't know. Our business model changed significantly. But to your point, from that, because we had to work through those types of opportunities, honestly, we became better operators because we had to. Certainly it was a degree in flexibility. We needed to pivot, from our traditional business model into something that adapted to the dynamics of the pandemic world. Since our inception, we were a dining room based business. We were breakfast and lunch. We built ourselves as the family community gathering place that, welcomed folks to come in and spend time and interface and interact. And obviously the pandemic took that, right off the table. So what do? when we look at our business now, we really look at it in terms of sales channels, right? So there's dining room business. At the time, we had a very small portion of our business was off premise because breakfast at the time was really not a big off premise type opportunity for us and our menu. So when the dining rooms closed and we needed to shift to third party, as pretty much everybody else had to, you had to pretty quickly re-engineer your menu, your offerings, your packaging, your scheduling in order to accommodate that off-premise business, that third-party business. We, like a lot of folks, assumed that when the dining rooms reopened, that the majority, if not all of that business, would probably go away, and we revert back to more of a traditional model, and that really didn't happen. We grew that portion of the business significantly through the pandemic, and we kept a good portion of that. So when the dining rooms opened and our guests came back, we had almost a built-in sales bump on that new sales channel that we didn't have previously. So that was super important. Now, in addition to that, we had at the time prior to the pandemic, we had a fairly well-defined catering program where we did quite a bit of business off premise, for catered events. And once again, during the pandemic, we didn't know whether that was going to come back because catering relies on large groups, and groups weren't the thing, right? So not when you're talking about social distancing and whatnot. But nonetheless, through the pandemic, we kept our key catering personnel. And that piece of the business not only came back, but grew substantially. So as a result of the pandemic, as I said, we became better operators. Our dining room model evolved, changed, and improved. Our off-premise model, our third-party business grew and improved, and our catering business grew exponentially. So as we sit here today, we're looking at double-digit sales growth, across the board, for all of our locations, and even accounting for, some menu inflation for price adjustments, there's real growth there in terms of customer count. So it was a good thing.
Amazing. No, I mean, and you say it, we talk about it like we're just having a casual conversation. Yeah, matter of fact, but really creating another revenue stream isn't something that's easy for anyone to do in business. So just being part of a franchise brand, again, the example is that a franchise brand can evolve when they need to, and they're doing it anyway. So it's like you're used to it. You just weren't used to it for this reason. Correct. You're always getting better. You're always looking for better ways to serve your audience. We were forced to adapt based on, but then our audience decided, wait a minute, we don't mind doing some of these things still. That was actually convenient now that I've learned to do this. I've gotten used to using a third party app or something. And you know what? The food was still pretty good. I'll do that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? It kind of trained them to do business with us differently. But what should not ever get lost is that in our industry, that what could be done as an individual would be almost impossible, right? I mean, maybe you would work through it, but be able to do all those things and then be able to look back 2 or 3 years later and say, we actually improved. That's the thing that was pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So tell me a little bit about your expansion plans, because I know a little bit about what we're saying here is obviously folks are in business, for themselves, but not by themselves. And the brand never thrives if the franchisees don't thrive. And so when you expand, obviously you're looking at success. You're planning for success. So you want to pick markets that you believe in, give you a strategic advantage, at least in the beginning, right? Tell me about your expansion plans, where you're headed, why, and how that looks for you in 2023 and beyond.
Yeah, we'd like to grow in contiguous markets. Right now, we have our base here in Columbus, with 8 stores in the metro area. We have a location up in Northern Ohio, not far outside of Cleveland. We've got 4 stores in Metro St. Louis. We have a foothold 7 stores in Dallas, Fort Worth. We've got single store operations in Carbondale, Illinois, and Huntsville, Alabama. So, obviously geographically diverse. The first opportunity would be continue to grow in and around those markets, right? There's synergies there in terms of distribution, as well as, brand recognition. So it makes the most sense to concentrate there. In some of the markets, it's a little more tricky, with as many restaurants as we have in Columbus, opportunity is a little bit more limited than what you would be ideal, but nonetheless, there's still options. So that would be, first and foremost, to continue to fill out our existing markets and then contiguous markets so that we can best service them. As we take a step back and we look at the country in general, we're partial to the Southeast. We feel that Atlanta, the metro Atlanta area, would offer an opportunity for the brand. It's a large, sophisticated restaurant market, a lot of opportunities. Real estate is still relatively affordable, good population base for employees. They're used to our type of service, so that's intriguing. North and South Carolina, Northern Florida, we think will be excellent opportunities for us as well. So that as we sit today and think about concentrating our marketing efforts, those are probably the markets that we'll look at. Other options, we like Nashville. We think Nashville will be an opportunity. And northeast Tennessee, the Tri-Cities. So we're poking around a little bit just to see what the options might be in those types of markets.
Yeah. Well, tell me as a marketer, and I know you have to wear that hat a lot, and you have over the years, sales and marketing. As a CEO, now you wear lots of hats. But tell me a little bit about how do you approach that targeting? Is there something unique that you like to do when you say, okay, we know that's the market we like, so what are we doing to approach that market, maybe get the word out? I know we all use brokers, we all use organizations. There's a lot of ways to market online. But is there something unique that you guys like to do that you say, well, we always do this when we enter a market?
Yeah, we're working with Mainland and, crafting the message. And it's been very good. I've been involved in the brand for a while. Many of us have been here for quite a number of years. And sometimes when you're that close to your work environment, that you don't always have the perspective that some folks can help provide you. So the guys at Mainland have been very helpful for having us take a step back and ask us critical questions about the brand. Why us? Why now? What is the opportunity? Why are you the choice? Craft your message. What portions of the segment can you own? Aspirational. Where do you want to be? Who is your target? Why is your target? Could you accommodate things outside of what you might have done traditionally? So it really has been helpful, I believe, in helping us put our message together and get our opportunity out in position properly. In breakfast and lunch, there are a number of things where we are all, there's the competitive set, right? So my lifestyle opportunity is pretty much the same lifestyle opportunity for anybody that operates in breakfast and lunch. So that's not different and unique, right? That's sort of a bar of entry that you need to clear. We know that breakfast tends to be a pretty profitable opportunity in terms of food costs, right? So there's an opportunity there, and there are certain breakfast items that position properly drive that. So innovation in the menu, I think, is important. But also we need to understand that for seasoned restaurateurs, right, that they look at our opportunity and they say, gosh, you guys are open from 6:30 to 2:30. Well, why don't we open for dinner? Because, right, we're paying rent 24/7. You're only operating for those day parts. So if we want to drive top line, let's create the day part. And we have in previous years, we've taken a variety of different shots at that dinner day part. But at the end of the day, we learned that if you're a breakfast and lunch concept, you need to concentrate on being the very best breakfast and lunch concept that you can, and not stray too far away from your roots, because that third day part opening creates a whole myriad of operational issues that you hadn't considered, not the least of which is the demands on the personnel, additional salary management, a bigger roster of part-time employees. So for us, not wanting to lean into that, we thought, well, how, what are the opportunities to drive our top line profitably, which, sell what we sell. And we lean pretty heavily into the catering operation. And that's kind of what we're hanging our hat on. Over the last 4 or 5 years, a group of individuals here have devoted the majority of their time to that catering program. And that has, in fact, for the stores that do it, has become that third day part. So when we talk to prospective franchisees and they say, hey, can I do dinner? The short answer is no. However, you can implement this catering program and create the sales benefit of that day part without adding to the operational complexity. So that really is, that's my pitch. That's my strongest play into what makes us different. I can tell you that I think we've got the best menu. I can tell you that we've got the best training program. I can tell you that we'll hold your hand, from concept to implementation to opening. But everybody will do that. But what I can tell you is I think I've got the best catering program out there.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. Conceptually, catering revenue is, you're dealing with businesses. So, many times it's very reliable revenue. It's repeat revenue.
Absolutely.
It's very much, it's similar business. It's not complicated revenue.
Not complicated revenue.
Yeah. It's funny when we talk this way because it's not stuff you normally think about when you're not a franchise, right?
Correct.
It's like every little thing. It's like, well, yeah, why not just do dinner because we're renting the building? Yeah. Well, here's 50 other details you probably didn't think about. But that's exactly the point, right? When you're really looking at things that way all the time, you're always paying attention to the impact. If we do Y, we'll get X. But that's the beauty of a franchise model, right? It's thought through.
That's exactly right, and that's the key. We took the lead on that. We spent the time and the money and put the resources against it. Didn't necessarily let a franchisee go out there on their own and say, yeah, go ahead, you guys give this a try and then let us know. And if it works, we're going to take the idea, polish it up a little bit and put it back out there like it was ours. So we didn't do that. We said, we hear you. Let us go on and test it. Let us put the resources of the corporation behind it, and let's see what happens. And at the end of the day, I think there were a lot of our franchisees that say, "Yeah, we're super glad we didn't do that."
Yeah, no, exactly. It's not quite as it's simple after the fact, right?
Yeah, there you go.
And it's and you have the corporate stores, so you can always run these things and perfect them and roll them back out. Which is again one of the ongoing benefits of being a part of a brand. So tell me, I like to wrap up the show usually with this question a lot of times. And, you have a guy like you could give folks advice that are interested in franchising in a couple ways, right? And so I wanted to see if you wanted to maybe, do it 2 ways. So if you would give advice to a restaurateur who might be thinking, franchising might be the way to expand my brand, right? Yep. What would be any advice you have for that kind of a guy? And then the other is for a franchise investor or an owner or someone who wants to own their own business for the first time. We're a more seasoned investor that wants to own, maybe diversify. What advice would you have for a potential franchisee? So potential franchisor, potential franchisee getting into your space, into where you guys are. What advice would you have for those guys? Yeah,
for getting into business, I'm biased. I'm 100% on this franchise side. I know it seems, franchisees are entrepreneurial. And they look at an opportunity and they say, I can make this work. That's what makes a franchisee, such a dynamic part of the organization. However, I will say this, that you mentioned it earlier. Sometimes things seem a little bit easier than what they are, and there's a lot of nuance there. So if you're out there in the world and you're thinking about going into business, there are a couple of suggestions that I would have. Kind of do that fearless self-inventory and think about what you really like to do and what type of environment that you flourish the best in. So I'm pretty well vested in the restaurant industry, and I would say, if you want to get into the restaurant business, it's a way of life. It really it stays with you. It's whether your hours are 24 hours or 10 or 12 hours, it's still a 24-hour business, right? So you've got to make that decision that you want to love it, and you want to have that level of interaction with people, and that you want to be on the ground dealing with customers. Somebody once said the restaurant business would be great if you didn't have to deal with customers and employees. So I mean, I talk to a lot of people that like to cook, so they want to get in the restaurant business. That's probably not the best reason. So, do that inventory. Decide what it is that makes you happy, and then look for opportunities out there that fit into that niche. And also, you got to be realistic. It's expensive. Restaurants are expensive. Even the ones that aren't expensive are expensive. So you got to kind of worry about that funding up front. Either you have it or you have a way to get it, and you've got to have a 3-year plan. You have to on making this investment. A lot of times, a franchisee can be somewhat exhausted by the time they actually open their restaurant, thinking that they've accomplished the goal. Hey, I got the restaurant open. That's not the goal. The goal is to make it successful after it's open. That's when the work starts. So you got to have a degree of energy. So I've been very fortunate over the years, and have helped a number of people reach their goals in this industry. All of them have a passion for the industry. All of them care deeply about what they're doing. All of them have a base that's people-centric for both their customers and their employees, and that's super important.
Yeah. And what would you say for the potential franchisor? Not so much the person that's a franchisee, but somebody that might be thinking franchising is the way to expand. What are your thoughts there?
That's a heck of a responsibility. I mean, you got to have your ducks in a row, because when you're out there talking with folks, they're investing their future with you. They're taking their hard-earned dollars. They're taking what they've been able to do to that date, and they're looking to you to provide growth and guidance and support, and you got to be prepared to do that. You never do a bad deal just to do a deal. Sometimes the best thing that you can do for yourself as a franchisor and the prospective franchisee is to say, hey, this isn't the right opportunity for you. It's not the right time. There are other things that are better suited for you. We've never chased numbers, and we never will, because we take that responsibility seriously. So, I love talking to folks that have a business concept and they want to franchise it, because I think making that opportunity available is something else. But you got to really go through it from soup to nuts to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row and you're able to deliver on that promise, because that's what you're doing. When they sign that agreement, you take their money, you've made a pact, and that's a huge responsibility.
Yeah, it is, but it's what drives the success of the industry. It everybody's got skin in the game, serious skin in the game. Right?
Serious skin in the game.
Yeah, there's no it's not okay for failure to occur. It's just never.
That's exact. No, listen, no one ever gets into business with the intent that they're going to fail, right? Everybody on that day of signing, man, you're smiling, you're happy, you're handshaking, you're back slapping, and you have every expectation that business is going to be successful. And from that day on, the franchisor needs to do whatever they can to make that happen. And if you do, then it's a wonderful result.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's win-win. They win, then you grow at the pace you choose to. As you said, you're not always just growing to grow. But, if you're successful, then you can pick and choose how you approach it and where you grow and who you take on to partner with. But again, it's a situation where you want to win and you want to succeed. And I love that, because I'm also, as a marketer and an entrepreneur, I've dabbled with lots of things, especially in the technology world. And there's nothing like franchising when it comes down to success. It's just nothing.
Yes.
So bottom line, if you want to be successful, it may not always be the sexiest business model, but it is the right one. And so, but that's great. So tell me, before I let you go, where can people learn more? What's the best way to reach out to you guys and learn more about Sunny Street Cafe?
Yeah, we www.sunnystreet sunnystreetcafe.com. That's the website. We've just freshened it up. We made it very accessible. There's a ton of information on there. There's a quick, easy, fill in a few of these blanks, and we're right back at you. So www.sunnystreetcafe.com, and we'll get right back to you.
All right. Well, that's great. Great stuff, Scott. I appreciate you. Thanks again for shedding light on Sunny Street Cafe's journey, innovations, and future growth potential, and where you're headed. Your insights in the breakfast industry are very valuable. I appreciate your time today. For our listeners, we hope you gained a fresh perspective on the evolving restaurant industry and the exciting opportunities it offers. We appreciate it. Stay tuned for more of these conversations in the future. We appreciate you, and bye for now.
Rob, thank you.
You're welcome.